official now. And I wanted to kind of, well, the first thing I wanted to do was just to do a little bit of oral skills, just to start out, okay? One of the things that we can do is just do a simple solfege warm-up exercise. This is one of my favorites. Oh, wait a second, this is the wrong. Right. You guys can probably predict where I'm going next with this, right? Okay. So this particular exercise is good because it gets us warming up through the major scale. This is something they call oblique motion, okay? In some ways, this is oblique motion. Oblique motion is this idea that you have kind of a stream of information that's staying constant, and then you have another stream of information that is kind of ascending or descending. So this is oblique motion, right? You can kind of imagine several different variants of motion. So let me actually just put this so that I don't have to type this up all the time. Let me just create a new page. Solfege patterns. Ascending, octave, major scale, oblique motion. It's this, right? You can kind of imagine another type of motion as being this. Right? This is what they call contrary motion, right? You see one stream kind of going one direction, and you see another stream going another direction. So this is right here. This is contrary to what you've heard. No, hopefully not contrary to what you've heard. This is contrary motion, kind of moving towards, okay? Now, this is another type of motion, right? Can you imagine a different kind of motion? Just conceptually in words. What do we do so far? We have this. We have this, right? Uh-oh. We have this one, right? Oh, sorry, included the bullet point. I don't know why it did. Right, we have this one, which is our good old kind of oblique motion. Then we kind of took this one, right? What's this one? What do they call this one again? Any ideas? Any lack of ideas? What do they call this motion? And if you can speak it loud and proud. Let's have to open the chat. Oh, someone said acute. Um, it kind of looks acute, right? I mean, I guess it has an angle to it. Or it could even be right. That could be the right answer. But what I will say is that I guess the term that we're kind of familiar with, or we'll familiarize ourselves with, is the idea of contrary motion. So contrary to what you've heard, or hopefully not, it's contrary motion. What's another type of movement, right? Just like think of shapes, right? You've got this kind of shape where one stays the same, one moves up. What's another type of shape? Let's just draw a pattern. Think of a pattern.
The opposite of contrary. So if they start from the same one and then move away from each other.
They start from the same one, but they move away from each other. Okay, let's do that. That's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually a variant of contrary. Thank you for bringing that up. That's what I was hoping. That's the kind of answer I was hoping for. right? You can kind of see what's happening. Right? This is another type of contrary motion. They're just moving apart, right? This is another type of contrary motion. In fact, before I copy this, let me just copy this. Contrary motion, moving apart. Okay, like that. My dog's here. All right. Good girl. Sorry, she might be a little bit needy right now, but she hasn't seen me today. So, anyway, good girl. So, what I have right here is this, and I guess there's another type of motion that we haven't talked about yet. What are some other options, right? We've got oblique, this kind of oblique, right? We've got this type of contrary. We've got this type of contrary, kind of like a less than, greater than kind of thing, right? Then what do we have? What are some other kind of shapes that you can draw? Melodic shapes. Any ideas? No ideas? Come on. You got to think of possible. It's honestly, they're very, we're dealing with a small set of constraints here, right? We're only dealing with like shapes, right? Any ideas? See, I'm going to look in the chat. Do the reverse of oblique motion. Okay, so let's see a verse. So what if we did something like this, which is actually a good thing to do? Go T. What if we did go T, do, la, do, so, do, la, do, oh gosh. So this is kind of like the inverse of what we did earlier, but it's still a variation of oblique motion. It's one of the voices stays the same. Unfortunately, oh, actually that worked. Okay, great. Okay, so you can do something like this as well. There are a few more that we're missing. What's another one that you can think of?
If you have the melody lines like parallel to one another, so they go up and down by the same interval.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to actually break this up into two components. I'm going to start out by doing similar motion. Very good. This is similar motion. Oh. Sorry, we're rewriting this. I'm rewriting this whole thing with my friend, so it's going to be less buggy. Okay. So this is an example of similar motion, right? Similar motion in that it's not exactly parallel, but the directions are the same, right? You can see that this top line is kind of going at a different, in the same direction, but this one's kind of moving slower. Like it's moving in shorter distances, right? Whereas this is moving in larger distances. If you follow what I mean, right? So let me copy the string. This. Okay. So I mean, we could do the same thing reversed as well, but I'm just not explicitly showing them. Then let's just do parallel motion. Would be this. That's strictly parallel, right? You can see how that works, right? Because in this particular case, you have perfect parallelicity. I don't think that's a word. Perfect parallelism in this particular situation, right? Because you have this is moving at the same rate as this, if you follow along, right? So these are all different like melodic constructs. So one of the exercises that I always like warming up with is actually this oblique exercise right here. Right? This is a nice exercise because you basically you expand your range by doing this. It's not to say that you don't expand your range by doing these other ones, but you expand your range while also anchoring yourself every single subsequent note. So you have like do, re, do, mi, right? You keep coming back to do, and in that sense, you have this kind of you're reassuring your path, and you're building confidence as you cover new ground. Okay, so let's do this one. Okay, ready? Go. Do, re, do, mi. Actually, let's just do this first. Ah, 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 ah. Just warm up your voice. It just feels, my voice personally doesn't feel ready to do this. Okay, it needs to warm up a little bit. Ah, ah. Okay, shake it out. Okay, get warmed up. Okay, let's do this. Do, re. Okay, ready? Go. Do, re, do, mi, do, fa, do, sol, do, la, do, mi, do, do. Do, ti, do, la, do, sol, do, fa, do, mi, do, re, do. Okay, very good. I see some lips moving. Maybe some people are humming. So everyone, just get involved. Everyone, move their lips. I can see. I can see you. And so, let's do this as best as you can. Okay, let's do. Okay, let's not do the contrary motion. That's going to be really hard. For one, you're going to have a two. You're going to have a 2-octave range to do this, which many people do, but it's not. That's not the difficult part. The difficult part is just singing these gigantic octave distances. Oh, it's a difficult exercise. Let's do this one more time. Let's do it on a different note. Ready? Go. Do, re, do, mi, do, fa, do, sol, do, la, do, ti, do, do. Do, ti, do, la, do, sol, do, fa, do, mi, do, re, do, do. By the way, I'm sitting down because I'm at the piano, but if you're finding this in any way difficult, I can't tell you how much easier it is to stand up and sing. It's just like our diaphragm, everything is more supported. So if you're struggling with this, just try standing. There's a good reason to sit and sing, but I've been taking voice lessons, and my teacher always asks me to stand. It's just kind of this thing that kind of practicing that. So like if we were in person, I would ask everyone to rise, and I would be sitting. If I were playing the piano, but I'd be conducting you otherwise. So anyway, that's a good solfege pattern. Let's make some more solfege patterns. Let's do this one. This one is a good one that I like doing. Okay. Do, mi, fa. I'll just sing it first. Do, mi, fa, sol, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Sorry. Mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do. You can sing it on ah, actually, if you'd like. Ah, ah, ah. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay. That's what we would use to, that's one we used to do with my a cappella group back in the day, in the good old days. So anyway, that's a good one. Let's do another warm up. Let's do just a very simple one. This is one they do at our school. This is one that Philip Larson, the conductor of the chamber singers and university choir at UCSD, does. Did that one. Actually, this is one that Brian Bosenthal from San Diego State, my private teacher, does. But this is one that Philip Larson does. If you remember scale degrees, T is the leading tone. If you remember the names for these scale degrees, for instance, let's say I go to, let me think about where this is. This would be under keys and scales. In fact, if you're ever in doubt of where something is, you can use the search function. If I go to scale degrees and solfege, there we go. And bam, there we are. So if you remember, I don't know how familiar you are with this idea, but the leading tone is basically the 7th scale degree. And it's the one that has the most gravity to want to resolve. So it might be a good idea to review these hand signs. These hand signs to learn pretty quickly. These are good. And you know, I totally have agency in kind of showing you these hand signs. And I guess the only thing I don't have agency is getting feedback and whether you're singing or not. But please try your best to sing and I will sing along, but I'll do these hand signs as well. These hand signs are great because there's this idea in neuroscience that neurons that fire together wire together. So the more associations you add to this whole process, the more you absorb the information. That's one of the principles of solfege, right? Because you're singing and you're theorizing, and if you add a gesture, you're kind of adding another layer of association. So with that being said, this particular exercise has this leading tone T. Let's just first sing the exercise and just listen for how this T really wants to go to do, but how it's also a little difficult to kind of get to that T. So you have to be a little bit careful because the T is unstable. So you might want to like go directly to do instead of going to T and then do. So as you're singing, just kind of be careful that you're not just going so, mi, do, but so, mi, ti, do, right? Mi, do. Oh yeah, I guess that's a jazz song. but it doesn't actually go to do. There's a jazz song called Misty that goes so mi ti. In any event, so anyway, let's do this. So we'll go on ah. We don't have to go so mi ti do, but the notes are here just in case you want to do it with solfege or if you want some assistance, contour assistance. Very good. So that's a good one. That's UCSD's very own exercise. So let's revisit. Well, this might be the first time you're encountering these scale degrees, because I think in 1A, Giannis didn't actually emphasize these, and I don't know if Alex did. Has anyone been familiarized with these yet? Has anyone learned what these scale degrees are? The hand signs? Okay, so okay, a little bit. I can hear my dog bothering, one of my dogs bothering my cat. One of my cats from across the house. Anyway, let's see. One thing that we could do is just start simple. I want you to kind of imagine some of these symbols, and I want you to think about which ones look the strongest, okay? I'll tell you what they are. But this one right here, it's like do, do. I think I talked about it just a little bit at some point, because I remember a little bit about this. Okay? So this is do, this is tonic. Now, supertonic, re. Re is pointing. Think about these as pointing to places. Okay? So re is pointing to me, re, mi. Okay? And then fa is pointing to where? Mi, mi, fa, mi. And then so is like solid, right? So is a strong one. You know, I think I've used this one before. Like, so, hey, you're in my space. So, you know, this is me. Like, do is strong. It's like they assert themselves. They're very confident who they are, right? Whereas fa likes going fa, it's unsure about itself. It goes to me, and re goes to me. Okay, so it occupies space. It's like this is who I am. Right? So, and then after that, la goes to la is neutral. It's kind of like this kind of like it's like water. It's like could be it doesn't really like have a preference. It could go to so, it can go to t, it could go anywhere, right? It's kind of neutral. La, ti, do. Okay, this is great. You know why I like this? This is, you know, one reason why this is great, and I can't believe we haven't done this up till now. This is something I can clearly verify that you're doing. So I'm going to ask those who are on video to join in and just, I can clearly, you know, it's hard to see your lips moving, to be honest, but I can sometimes see your lips moving. But I'm going to ask that you, yeah, let's get our hand signs going, okay? Let's do do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, let's do that one more time. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Very good. Awesome. Let's do, you know, this is going to be really hard to verify, but I'm just not going to sing, but I'm going to do hand signs. And you try to sing. hand sign pattern. You sing it. I'll give you a secret message. I'll send you a secret message. Okay. If you're ever bored and you're like in a conference or something, or in an office meeting, you can just like sign solfege to your friend and kind of send single patterns. Kind of fun. So let's do this. Ready? See if you can decode what I'm doing. I'll do it one more time. The rhythm kind of gives it away. So. Ideas? Someone see. I'm gonna open the chat. There we go. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Yes. Make a diamond shape. Oh, okay. I'm not sure. Oh, I should. I don't know what that is referring. Oh, okay, okay. Right. That was referring to the types of motion. So, very good. I should figure out. I need to figure. I wish I had an extra screen so I could just have all these windows open. I have to like close them. Let me see if I can put it to the side. I wish it would just attach to the video window. It doesn't. With that being said, that'd be a good feature request. Let's do another one. Oh wait, my video turned off. Did it? How did that happen? Video comes back on. Okay, there I am. Please let me know if that happens. Just speak up because the chat may be missing. I don't know. Anyway, let's do. Okay. Okay, let's try this one. I'll do the rhythm first. Oh, sorry. I'm going to start over. Look at every symbol that you saw. Oh, you can't see that well. Sorry. I'll just do the first bit. I'm getting used to this again. It's been a while since I've done this, but it feels good. It's coming back. Ready? Any ideas? Let's do that first bit again. What was I doing, first of all? What were the syllables? What was the rhythm I'm doing? What rhythm is that?
It's a small world?
James, you got it. Nice. It's a small world. It's a small world after all. Very good. I mean, the rhythm kind of gives it away. There's like an episode, I think there's like a Jimmy Fallon or something where Shaq is trying to communicate musical ideas, and he does it just by doing rhythm, right? But some of these things are given away by rhythm, but some of these things are given away by pitch. Like this rhythm, just by the rhythm alone, you can probably guess that. But then if you add the pitch in, then you get, it's a small world after all. So let's just do that one, okay? Just join it and try to hand sign with me, okay? Hopefully you know what the lyrics are. I'm pretty bad with lyrics. Probably the worst person with lyrics you'll ever meet. But I do know the lyrics to this song. At least the chorus. I don't know the lyrics to the whole song. Ready? Go. Do, re, mi. Oh, actually, no. You sing the song with the solfege. It's a small world after all. 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 Do whatever you feel comfortable with. This might be really hard, so I'm going to slow down. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. It's a small also realize it's probably useful to see me in a bigger fashion if I'm going to be doing hand signage. So I'll do it one more time. It's a small world after all. 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 Hey, nice. Hopefully these kind of sink in, the association. Because I guess like there's another, because you're bringing your body into it, the idea is maybe you also feel the height and you, because your vocal cords are essentially, I mean, I want you to think about this physiologically for a second. Sing a really high note and put your hand on your throat, like go, and now sing a really low note. Notice how your larynx lifts. I'm not sure if I'm using the term correctly, but there's something that lifts, right? Right? So hopefully by doing these rising and falling associations with your hands, you kind of correlate that to your vocal cords, hopefully. It also occurred to me that if you wanted to, you can also make my window a little bigger, right? You can still see me, hopefully. Cool. So I'll just keep it here. Okay. Let's review this. Let's switch to a little bit of theory really quickly. And I'm going to open up this again. And I just want to review open position versus closed position, because I think it was kind of clear using this modality. Jeez. Okay. No. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Okay, so let me ask you this. Remember, a C major chord has 3 notes in it, right? It has 3 particular, or any major chord has 3 particular pitches, right? And if you're treating the first pitch as do, the next pitch would be mi, and the next pitch would be so, right? And the idea is you can rearrange these any way you want, okay? So remember, a voicing is just like a very specific way of rearranging these notes. So if we go to voicings, it's just a very precise configuration of the notes in a chord. And there are many different voicings for a particular chord. So what you're seeing here are all these different, just a sample of different voicings you can use for different chords. And we can keep making some up. In fact, someone give me a good voicing for C major. Just using those 3 notes, including like skip an octave or whatnot. In fact, let's do this. Let's do this like, I don't know, like Price is Right style. So someone give me a solfege syllable. Any syllable at all. That's in the C major chord.
Fuck.
Well, sorry. I should, can you give me one?
My bad.
No worries. No, but please give me, I'm glad you gave me something. Just give me something from Do, Mi, or So.
Let's do it so.
Okay, So for 500, Bob. All right, here we go. So we got So. Let's get to, so we got So. Now let's, you know what? Someone give me another one.
Do.
Do. Okay, this is the solfege is right. Okay. All right. It's Do. Just for fun, I'm gonna. Yeah, you know, I'll leave it right there. Do 3. Now what? What's another one? You guys are asking the audience. Have any solfege?
Another Do.
Another Do. Okay. Oh, you know what? Okay. I have to do this manually, but that's okay. Then what?
Mi.
There we go. And I will stop there. Okay. So now let's look at all these chords that we constructed. They all contain do, mi, and so. And they all contain do, mi, and so. But some of them are utilizing, some of them basically are in a complete order without skipping any of the letters. They're completely compact, right? Like if you're using do, mi, and so in order, and they're totally compact, like then they are totally compact, right? Doesn't matter if you use do, mi. It doesn't matter if you start on do, mi, or so. For instance, if I do this, this is probably going to break. So let me just copy this all, refresh my page, and do this. Let me go here. Oh, okay. Not quite working the way I thought it would, but anyway, check this out, okay? If I start on do, what's the next what is the next note that I have to use if I'm in closed position? I have to use mi if I want to be in totally closed position, right? If I'm in mi, what's the next compact note that I can use? So, right? Similar, so this is a closed position chord, but there's no other, these letters, there's no spacing. Like I can't insert another do, mi, or so in between these do's, mi's, and so's. That's what closed voicing really means, okay? Same thing goes for here. This is an inversion, mi, so, do, but can you figure out a way to insert a do, mi, or so in this? No, right? You can insert a fa or a re, but those aren't in the chord that we're dealing with, right? Okay, and same with here. So this is also closed because there's no way of inserting another do, mi, or so. Okay, how about here? Let's look at this one. Is there a way to insert a do, mi, or so? Hover over, tell me, when I hover over a particular space in this chord, I'm going to go vertically. Tell me when I can insert another do, mi, or so.
Yes, sir.
Right, there's a so. So what? Okay, so this means that we're in open position. This is an open position chord. This is one definition. This is basically the definition. It means that we can insert a chord member into the existing voicing, like within the existing voicing, okay? So let's see. Let me just write that down. Closed. Open means you can insert an existing chord member within the voicing, okay? So in this particular case, this is the voicing. This is precise configuration of notes. And you can insert an additional existing chord member into this particular voicing. No problem, right? Right here. How about here? I'm going to hover and tell me what gives it away as to whether it's open or closed.
There.
Okay. Very good. Okay, let's do this one. See, some people mistake big chords as being open or closed. They're like, oh, this big chord must be open. This big chord must be closed. Let's take a look at this. By the way, yeah, okay, I'll just do it. Anything that's making this closed or open? No, right? This is I mean, nothing could make this open, so this is closed. Sort of a process of elimination. Okay, how about here? This is a little bit visually harder to see, but just think a little bit about this.
There.
There, exactly. There's a mi that could fit right here. I don't know why perceptually the spacing looks a little bit smaller than this spacing. I think this is just a function of my program. When there's space, it doesn't make the spaces prominent until it's been declared somewhere else. It's kind of like, this is a table, so like there's nothing in this table entry. So that's why it looks like this, but really something. Anyway, so with that being said, there's a lot of stuff that I think that's a more or less clear concept. Hopefully you understand that. The reason that's significant is because if I'm asking you to, for instance, come up with a question, which is, I mean, this homework 2 is going to come out on Thursday, but if I kind of open it up and take a look at it preliminarily, there are some concerns about open and closed position, right? Some of these chords are in open position, some of them are in closed position. And so we have to figure out a way to analyze these chords in a way that is consistent, I guess, irregardless of whether you're encountering an open or closed position chord. So for instance, what I recommend is I have this acronym, this quite confusing acronym. And I don't know if this is necessarily, perhaps this is not, oh no, this is good. What you ultimately want to do, I think, conceptually, you can agree, I think, that the closed voicing version of a chord is like more conceptually simple than an open voicing chord, right? There's some sort of like simplicity in it, right? It's the most compact way. It's like, it's the home kind of configuration. And all of the open configurations occur by taking that and like inserting stuff so that like that becomes more convoluted in some ways, right? You have something like this. This is like the nice open closed way of representing this. All the scale degrees are accounted for, and then you could make this open by potentially bringing this note down an octave, and you have this, right? And then you're suddenly left with a void over here. So when we're analyzing chords, it's often easiest to bring them into closed voicing configurations. And I just want to kind of emphasize that because that's an important analytical consideration. If you don't do that, it's hard to analyze because it's just easier to see the structure of a chord when it's in closed voicing because you can see the thirds stacked on top of each other, and you just kind of get a sense for the correct order of notes, and it's easier to just analyze them, right? Because remember, if we're building snowmen, like all of these different triadic constructions that we've talked about, like major triads or seventh chords, they're all predicated on these stacked thirds, and that's like basically the basis for our analysis. So that's why we're concerned with kind of converting them when we're considering them, and that's something that I do all the time. Like when I have music, this is not just a theoretical consideration. This is something I literally do when I'm analyzing music. So for instance, if I have, in fact, let me actually do this. I've got this. You might not at first glance know what this is. So instinctually, what's something you can do? Figure out what notes are in this chord. Just figure out the notes. This is probably the simplest way to do it. Beyond, this is one of the ways you can do it. Is what letters are in this chord?
C, E, G.
C, E, G, right? So start like until like name the notes out, right? Name the notes, and then what you'll find are a collection of notes, and hopefully that collection of notes that you find is something that is rearrangeable in your mind as a triad that you're familiar with, or it's this alphabet soup thing that I really like, right? It's just a stack of thirds, a string of thirds. Get really comfortable with a string of thirds because this is going to become more confusing when we get into jazz chords, which we're going to start talking about next class, and maybe even a little bit at the end of class today. Get comfortable with looking at a set of notes on the staff and figuring out what letters belong or exist within that, and then kind of making a quick snowman out of it, okay? You don't have to literally make the snowman where like you literally do this. You don't have to literally do that. It might suffice to find it might suffice to find the closed voicing version of this just in your mind, right? You might see C, E, and G and be like, well, I see that there's a C, E, and G here. Or maybe maybe the first logic is you see that there's a G, E, and C. Like that's what you first encounter, right? And then you're like, G, E, C, does this make up a triad? Can I rearrange this in such a way that I get a triad? Like, or a root position triad? Like, and sure, you can, right? You can just do that, right? So that might be your thought process. You might see these notes, be like G, E, C. Like, it's like almost like you're playing Scrabble. It's like, oh, you have G, E, C. What can I make with this? Can I make something with this? It's an anagram. Oh yeah, I can make C, E, G with this, okay? Then your instinct or intuition should then kind of be in the direction of this is a C major chord, okay? So the next step, remember, is you have to pay attention to the bass note of this chord, okay? The bass note of this chord is super important because the bass note tells you, and the bass note alone tells you the inversion, okay? So what you have to do what you have to do, I'm just going to kind of do this in real time for you, is you have to think about this root position chord, which you've analyzed to be this, okay? And I'll color this, well, I'll just bolden it, okay? So you know the root. What is the root? The root is this, C, right? Following along, this is C. So you know the root to be C. Then you have to ask yourself, well, what chord did I make just now? I made this chord that, well, you basically figured out the chord. I guess the question is, what bass note do I have? And the bass note is what? What bass note is this?
C.
C.
So then here's what you have to do. You compare what you've made. Either you can describe it like this or you can describe it in notation. Either way, doesn't matter. You describe the bass note. Sorry, pardon me, I'm gonna sneeze. You describe the bass note basically as a position within this chord that you've described, this root position version of the chord. The closed voicing root position version of the chord. You have to describe the bass note within the closed voiced root position version of the chord. So where is this bass note in relation to the closed voicing root position version of the chord? Is it the bottom note? Is it the middle note? Or is this bass note C, the top note? Visually, you can very easily see it's what?
Bottom.
Bottom note. And if it's the bottom note, it means that we are in which position?
Root.
Root position, okay? So the bottom note corresponds to the bass note in our original chord, which means we're in root position. Now, if I had this voicing instead, your instinct might have still led you to getting this chord, right? And then you get here, right? So if I had this voicing, this is still like an open position chord, so you still have to conceptually kind of simplify it into this closed voiced root position variant, or I guess like version, the original, the OG kind of status. So you take this and then you find it within this kind of home configuration. And what did you find? What position does this bass note occupy in this kind of home configuration?
What's the first inversion?
It's a first inversion. It technically occupies the first position, I guess. Or no, it occupies, yeah, I guess you can consider it the first position. But it's, I don't know, it's the first inversion. Its counting system is weird. It might start from 0, it might start from 1, right? You can think of, in computer science terms, root position to be the 0th position. And first inversion could be the first position. This could be the second position. But this is first inversion, right? And similarly, if I had this note up here, I would consider this second inversion, right? So I'm hoping that you're understanding why it's significant to kind of find this home position, I guess is what I'm calling it. But really what it is expanded is a closed voiced root position version of the chord, which is why I call this whole section what's a root position version of the chord. It looks like something in Russian or something, some Cyrillic letters. But what we have here basically is an anagram for something that could be described as something else, but there's no name for this, right? A closed voicing root position version of the chord. There's nothing, unfortunately, there's no name I know that describes this concept, so we have to kind of think about it in this way. But that's really what you have to do. There's no escaping, whether you write it out alphabetically or you write it on the staff, there's no escaping kind of comparing the bass note of the chord that you're trying to analyze against this kind of structure. Whatever you call the structure is fine. There's no escaping comparing that bass note with this particular structure, however you describe it. So this becomes more significant as it becomes more complicated. Right now we're only dealing with 3 chords. But interestingly, I'm gonna jump to the other one series notebook, which is not assimilated into this current notebook. We're going to start getting into these more complicated chords, jazz chords. So for instance, if I take these jazz chords and I copy them over to our notebook. Nope, wrong one. Series 2020. See if that works. Okay, great. We've got some jazz chords. You might think, well, with 3 notes, it might be relatively easy. I don't have to think too hard about this, but it gets more complicated when you get jazz chords or 7th chords, right? A 7th chord only has this many thirds, right? It's this kind of component right here. It's 4 notes, right? Well, you get into jazz chords, you actually keep stacking thirds. So you have 9ths, you have 11ths, you have 13ths. It gets more complicated, right? That's the idea, I guess, like the modality of jazz. You can just keep stacking thirds. You have chord degrees that are greater than a 7th. And I could give you an introduction to this, but I guess I'll just give you a very crude introduction. That sets the stage. There's something I want to disambiguate or differentiate, and that is the idea of a chord degree. When we're studying jazz chords, this idea of a chord degree is significant. Like thirds, fifths, sevenths. When someone says, oh, there's a flat 9 in the chord, or there's an 11 in the chord, or there's a 13 in the chord. These are all chord degrees. These aren't referring to the notes in the scale that we're dealing with. These are referring to the notes in the chord that we're stacking at that exact moment. So for instance, in classical idea, if we think about simple classical chords, and we think about this, not to say that all classical chords are simple. In reality, Chopin would use jazz chords, but jazz kind of emphasized that tradition even. Well, everything is related. So I mean, it just expanded on itself, and it developed new things as well. But if we're thinking about a very simple triad, enclosed voicing root position configuration, we can describe these as chord degrees. And the chord degrees we can use to describe this are 1, 3, and 5, right? We can do 1, 3, and 5. These are the chord degrees of this particular chord. What if I have this? We have 1. What are the chord degrees? 1, 3, 5, and 7. Now, here's the thing about chord degrees, at least the way that jazz people think about them. They're always referencing major scale. So what do I mean by that? That's a confusing statement in itself. I don't mean that we're using scale degrees. I don't mean that like we're thinking about this in like every single chord. Like I don't mean this. What I mean is, if we're thinking about chord degrees, what chord degree is this? 1, 3, 5, 7. I have to back up for a second. Now, what chord degree is this? 1, 3, 5, 7. Okay? Now, if we're in the key of C major, what chord degree is this? 1, 3, 5, 7. If we're in the key of C major, what chord degrees are this? 1, 3, 5, 7. That's the chord degree. It doesn't change depending on what key you're in. It's always going to be 1, 3, 5. Like that's technically I'm not telling you the truth. This is actually 1 flat 3, 5 flat 7. But we'll talk about that in a second. But scale degrees, if we're in the key of C major, this is 1, 3, 5, 7. And these scale degrees are, in terms of this chord, these notes in the chord in terms of scale degrees are 2, 4, 6, 1. Do you understand the difference? There are 2 different ways of thinking about it. It's just what you're referencing, right? In terms of chord degrees, we're referencing the bottom note as being 1. Or we're thinking about here's the thing, that stupid acronym that we came up with, it just keeps rearing its usefulness. When we're thinking about these chord degrees, we're thinking about them in the context of this, the closed voiced root position version of the chord. So we're referencing the bottom note of the closed voiced root position version of the chord as 1 when we're dealing with chord degrees. Okay? But when we're dealing with scale degrees, we're thinking about the key that we're in. And the key that we're in that unifies both of these chords is C major, which is something I just told you. It could be other keys, but we're defining it as C major. So in that sense, C is going to be the first scale degree always for this particular key. That's a scale degree. And so in that sense, D right here is going to be the second scale degree of this, right? But the chord degree itself is 1, because remember, this is the closed voiced root position version of the chord. It's terrible. It doesn't even have a nice, convenient way of saying it. It's I can't even. It's just hard to say. Maybe I should just call it the home configuration. Maybe I should just make up my own name for this. The home configuration. I don't like that. There's something wrong. That's also confusing because then hopefully I won't hate myself later for doing this, but let's just think about this as the home configuration, right? A closed voiced root position version of the chord is the home configuration. In some ways that kind of makes sense. It's like there's something elegant about this configuration, right? In some ways. So it's important to be able to reduce chords to this, because in jazz notation, you might think, oh, well, jazz chords always do this, right? When would I not be in the home configuration? Well, just like with other chords, simpler chords, you can also make this into open position. You can be like, I'm gonna bring this up an octave. Right? Now it's starting to sound really jazzy. Right? You're not limited to being in a stack of thirds. But when you're doing this analysis, you still have to bring it into its home position. That's like the confusing thing. It just becomes harder when you have 7 notes in the chord. It's not as easy as looking at a chord that's like, oh, well, it's C, E, and G. So it might be beneficial to just like actually take out a pen and paper and write down all these notes and try to stack them in order so that you can find the home position, right? Home position. No, yeah, home voicing. Home voicing. The home voicing. Yeah, okay. I can live with that. So with that being said, this is something you're gonna have to familiarize yourself with. Like what we just talked about is very applicable to what we're going to talk about. It's not like when we study these, to be honest, it's not like when we're going to study these jazz chords, I'm going to get you into doing open voicing versions of the chords right away. In fact, I might never ask you to do that, but it's something that you yourself will have to know. Like if you take jazz theory, like I remember when I took an entrance exam for a jazz theory class, not that you'll take the same class I took and have the same entrance exam I had, but I remember it was basically like analyzing chords that look like this. And the way you analyze chords that look like this is exactly the same way you analyze chords that look like this. You basically bring them into the home voicing. And once you're in the home voicing, you understand a lot of things about the chord. You understand the bass note. You understand you don't understand the bass note by looking at home voicing. You understand the bass note by looking at the original voicing. But you understand, no, you do. You understand the root of the chord by looking at the home voicing. And you also understand some information about the bass note by thinking about this in contrast with the home voicing. So for instance, if this is the home voicing, or actually, well, whatever it was, right? You can kind of compare this bass note, just like we did before, with in terms of where it exists in the home voicing. And you could be like, oh, it's over here, or it's not here at all. So I did this chord wrong. Right? You'd be like, oh, it's over here. So this must be a root position chord. It's the same process. It's just a little bit more complicated because you have more notes. But it's the same exact process. It's like, how do you find the home position so that how do you find the home position so that you basically know what the root is, and then you look at the original voicing to find the bass note within it. And actually, jazz people don't care about inversion necessarily as much as classical people. They do sometimes. So like actually the first part of just finding what the root of the chord is and describing the notes within that chord is like a really significant aspect of this. It gets more complicated though, to be honest, because jazz chords don't always, and similar to classical chords, they're not always stacked in thirds. Sometimes you have a configuration of notes that can't be stacked in thirds. So for instance, do your best to stack this stack of notes in thirds, and you can't do it. There's no way to stack these notes in thirds, unfortunately. But you can get really close. Ultimately, you can get a chord that almost has all notes in thirds, and then you have maybe one note that isn't in thirds. And the idea behind these notes that aren't in thirds, like you can see that there's a second here and there's a fourth. Think about how close this is to a configuration of thirds. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, and we'll reiterate a lot of this stuff, but notice how this note is almost a third. So there's a lot to say about this. It's a very, very fascinating topic, and I'm glad we get to talk about it. And so when they basically said I kind of took a little bit of creative latitude here, but when they said in the syllabus, they're like, oh, talk about jazz chords. I went all out and I said, well, if we're going to talk about 9th, 11th, 13th chords, let's really talk about them. So we're gonna I don't know if this is what they necessarily intended to go this deep into it, but it's a fun area of exploration, and it's very practical if you're interested in popular music of today. Because actually, truth be told, popular music of today doesn't necessarily hinge on all of these classical constructions. They use jazzier chords. And so to understand the structure within these jazzy chords, you'll be better equipped to do analysis for those kind of structures. But with that being said, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So let's just save some of it for next class. And let's do a little bit more of ear training. So let's go to the intervals section. Let's go to the songs for interval recognition. And let's do, okay, In My Life. You guys know this Beatles song, In My Life? Okay. Right, it starts out with the guitar. I almost want to say, I don't have perfect pitch, but it almost sounds like, I almost want to say it's that. It sounds like darker, or maybe, it doesn't really matter because the same interval is true with that. There's a minor sixth. Right? Let's actually listen to the real thing. I like guessing and trying to figure out. Oh, I want to guess that it's. I'm gonna guess it's this. It doesn't matter really. It's just more of a color depending on what register, how low or high you are. Let's see, Dave, what's the name of the song? It's In My Life? No. It's In My Life. Okay. Great. Yeah. So what we have is a minor sixth. In fact, this minor sixth starts on what scale degree? Any guesses? We're being absolutely accurate here. And we're using do-based major. It would be mi, do, mi, fa, so, ti, mi, do, mi, fa, so, ti. Because we're in the key of A major. It doesn't matter what key we're in, but this is 1, do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, do, mi, fa, so, ti, mi, do, mi, fa, so, ti. Okay? Let's sing that together. 3, 2, ready, go. Mi, do, mi, fa, so, ti, 2, ready, go. Mi, do, mi, fa, so, ti. Okay? Let's do another one. Hopefully you guys are able to just do more of this stuff so that you can just get it stuck in your head and the associations just come naturally. Just run on instinct. It doesn't matter if you get it right or wrong. Just guess. See if you get it right and then just adjust. You know? That's a great way to kind of get it. So that's a minor sixth. In My Life, da 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 da. That's the same interval as the Entertainer. Right? Mi, do, mi, right? Mi, do, mi, do, mi, do. Same exact interval. There's nothing really different about that. It's just that Entertainer just like that, right? Mi, do, mi, do, mi, do. And that goes chromatic. Do, re, mi, ti, re, do. Okay, it uses some of those chromatic syllables. Okay, let's try that. Mi, do, mi. In fact, it even starts with this. If you want to get really precise. You don't have to, because you want to get, well, let's do it. Right. Oh, oh, it doesn't like this. Oh, it does. Okay. Re, re, mi, do, mi, do, mi, do. There's that chromaticism, right? Re, re, mi. Let's do this. Re, re, mi. Re, re, mi, re, 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 mi, re, 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 mi, re. Technically, it's not the correct scale degree, but that's okay. Re, this is just to practice our chromaticism. Re, re, mi. Let's go on. Re, re, mi, do, mi, do, mi, do. Do, re, re, mi, do, re, mi, ti, re, do. Okay? It's a little bit of a tricky one, I know. I'll give you a really tricky chromatic exercise. Chromatic exercises are ones that have half steps and kind of have these chromatic solfege syllables. This is one that I do. I study composition and bass with my teacher, Mark Dresser here at UCSD. And he came up with a bunch of exercises that deal with chromaticism because it's very difficult. Somehow I gained. Someone borrowed a bass from someone they knew, and then I borrowed a bass from that person, and then like the original person never asked for it back, and then the other person never asked for it back. And I take composition lessons with Mark, and I was like, hey, Mark, can you help me with this? I have this big instrument here, and he's like, sure. But it's a difficult instrument to kind of keep in tune, just like all string instruments. So one of the things that you can practice are these chromatic exercises. And this is one that he made up. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Re, ra, me, re, ra, me, ra, re, do, di, re, do, do, di, re, ra, do, re, ra, me, ra, re, do, di, re, do. That's tricky. It looks harder than it is, but it is hard. But if you can do this one, man, this is a good one to do. It's very, very intricate, and it's not like a crowd pleaser either. So it's a thankless exercise, but it'll pay off if you do it, because you'll get your chromaticism in tune. Notice how, like, when I go up, I use the sharp solfege syllable, do, di, and going down, I use the flat syllable. You don't have to, but that's what I did. Do, di, re, ra, do, re, ra, mi, re, ra, mi, ra, re, do, di, re, do, di, re, ra, do, re, ra, mi, re, ra, mi, ra, re, do, di, re, do. Wow. Okay. So anyway, that's a good one. It's also a very weird one, I will admit. But let me put that into the Maybe I'll put that into the solfege OneNote. Solfege patterns. I'll say solfege contours. Other solfege. Chromatic. Anyway, oh, whoa. Wait a second. What happened there? There we go. Okay. Well, anyway, that's about it for today. If anyone has any questions, you can stick around. Yeah, thank you, class, and enjoy it. We'll start talking about some jazz chords next class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel? Layla?
Hi, I have a few specific questions, like specific to me. So,
Sure.
um,
Let me stop recording.